So at this point, we have done a lot. We've created a basic Flask app. We've created several views, one of which does not actually require does not give any data. Another one which actually sends data to the application. We have learned how to create templates, how to put variables within templates, how to create loops within templates. And we have learned how to take a base template so we can use that to extend other templates so that our templates are, quite frankly, less of a mess. So now we're actually going to use that base.html to show the beauty of having a template that you can extend. We are going to add something called Bootstrap. Now, if you don't know what Bootstrap is created by Twitter. I don't know if I think they're still maintained by Twitter. But it is basically a great way to make your application look less barren with little effort. So they offer CSS, JavaScript, all kinds of other stuff, and all you basically have to do is you put their URL on your page, which is great. You can install it if you want. I prefer not to. I just like using their bandwidth, to be perfectly honest. And I'm going to put in the new thing. So git reset hard, get rid of your changes, git checkout master, go back to the present, git checkout 49EFEDE to go to the right commit, and then git clean FD to remove all of the stuff that we don't need. Pause if you need it. So what has changed? If you look at this, it just kind of looks nicer. We have a nicer font. The colors are actually nicer. I don't know if you can see this on the stream, but instead of being stark black on stark white, it's an off black on an off white, which is more pleasing to the people using your website. But otherwise it works the same. Let's see what changed. To do that, we're going to open base.html. And here's what we have. In the head, which is basically where we might link all of the CSS, JavaScript, put the title of the page, all that stuff, we have 2 links from Bootstrap. And all this is a style sheet and some JavaScript. That's it. And where you get these links is if you go to Bootstrap and you go to Getting Started. There. You just copy them from here. I ignore the one that has an optional theme. That's where you could actually put in one of their different themes, but boop. That's all you do. Copy and paste, put it in your head. And now what's nice about this is this will carry through to every single page. So if we look at the max view, it looks nicer. And if we just go to the base, it too looks nice. And what's really nice about this is that, if we do have to change out that link at any time, we just change one file. You shouldn't have a simple change that requires you to change 50 files, ideally. Every once in a while you do have to refactor. It's okay, no shame in it. But for something like this, you'd really just want to change your base.html. So, ta-da! We have now added Bootstrap. And some of the other advantages of Bootstrap, it's responsive, so you don't have to create different views for mobile or whatever. They have all kinds of neat stuff for columns and stuff, so I highly recommend them. They're great. Unless you're a front-end designer. If you're a front-end designer, this is so way under you. It's not even funny. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some more blocks. Now that we've made it pretty, okay, git reset hard, git checkout master, git checkout my new hash, git clean. So here is the hash. So reset, checkout master, check out the new hash, which is F975A12. and then clean to get rid of anything that we don't need. Now let's look at base again. Bring my head down. So if you look at if you look at base.html, you would see that we actually have two blocks now. We have block page title, end block, block content, end block. And if we go look at game, we now have two blocks on that template. We have block page title with a header, block content with the content. So you basically stuff everything in page title into, stuff everything within these two block tags into the page title block, and then stuff all of this stuff into content. And if we reload, it should look, oh, gotta run it. It looks exactly the same, except for some places where I updated the HTML a tiny bit to make it look a bit nicer, but that's another class. So exactly the same, but now you can create as many blocks as you want. So you may have a block for your navigation, you may have a block for your footer, so like the stuff at the bottom, you may have one for like a side navigation and a top navigation, all kinds of ones. Most based on HTML files have lots and lots and lots of like things, lots and lots of content blocks on them. And you can make as many as you want, as much as you feel that you can maintain. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create a form. Now, so far we've been getting data from the URL, but sometimes you need something a bit more user-friendly. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to get my new hash. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to create, actually, before we do that, we need to deal with requirements. Because when we create a form, we're actually going to need to install something else, but it can start to get a little messy. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the new hash, stop running. No. Okay. Here's the new one. So reset, checkout master, checkout 6886 DB, and then clean. Now what was added? A file called requirements.txt was added. What is this? This is actually a list of everything that's required to run the application at this point. And what we can do with this is we can actually use pip to install each of these items. Now let me explain each of these lines. So this is the name of the thing that we'll be installing, so Flask. Equals equals, and then these numbers means this is the version I want. This is called pinning the version. Do this. It was a very hard lesson for me when I was a baby developer. I didn't pin the version. And because I listened to somebody who was unwise. And I didn't pin the version. And things went crazy because a few things put out new updates. And they stopped working with each other. And I basically had to spend an afternoon literally going through everything and stepping back to figure out the last time everything had worked. So you want to pin your versions. An unpinned version would look like that. Don't do that. Pin your versions. So what this is going to do, pip will go through each one of these lines and it will install that thing at that version and everything else that's required for it. That's one of the great things about pip is it not only installs that thing, it installs all of the dependencies. So in order to do that, we do pip, wait, sudo pip. And once again, you shouldn't have to do sudo pip. Here we're doing it because I don't want to teach a class on virtual environments. So because Cloud9 is very fully encapsulated, doesn't touch anything else, this is fine. One day we're going to have the class where I go over everything else. So sudo pip install -r requirements.txt. You're going to see text flash by. And it's going to say, here's all the stuff that it successfully installed. And this, I'm going to create a new sticky. Come on, get big. Hey, big. No. Sudo pip install -r require txt. Going to embiggen it so everyone can see it. There. This is what you need to run. So go ahead and run that. It should only take like a minute to install everything. It's going to have to install more on your system, I believe, because I had some of these pre-installed. But go ahead and do that, and then we're going to create a form. Okay, so in this case, actually a couple of things have changed. Let me close all of these folders, and then I'll get you your hash here. There. So reset, check out the master, check out DAD79C, and then clean it. So here we go. What are some of the things that have changed? Well, first, our init.py changed. So in order to use forms, I'll go through this, but there's a lot of stuff we had to change. So one of the things that changed is we added this line, app.config from object config. A bit of magic. Every once in a while, just the syntax, it's not really magic, it's just the syntax is a little hard to explain. This basically says we are now going to actually configure our app in a certain way. Let's look at this config file. CSRF enabled equals true, and secret key equals Mars needs lawnmowers, which, oh no, now you all know my form thing for a form that is not going to actually exist anywhere once I close this view. So CSRF. CSRF stands for, and I'm going to pull this up, SRF definition, because I always screw up what this exactly stands for. Cross-site request forgery. So basically, if somebody uses your form that isn't supposed to, they could then post using your form and do all kinds of stuff with it. This happened to a site that I worked with. We inherited it from another contract, and they were very proudly saying they had like 2 million views a month or something insane for the site it was. What we discovered when we looked through their logs, many of those hits were actually going to their contact us form, and yet they rarely got like nobody ever contacted them. What had happened was some spammers somewhere else had discovered that they had not locked down this form and were using it. They had hacked it in their own way by hacking headers and stuff like that, basically as a mail server for their spam. So that's what happened. That's what all those views were. They were sending a bot to that page and using the company's the company's like web server to send out all of this spam. Once we added in just a little bit of the CSRF, it stopped like overnight. So you really want to add this. This is important. So we're basically saying, yes, enable it, and here's the secret key that somebody would need to know. By the way, this file, config.py, should never hit your Git repo. It's in my Git repo because this is a class, and because I'm never deploying this app. And actually, if I ever do deploy it, I will not be using this config file on my server. But you never want to have stuff like this actually committed into your repo. What else has changed? We have added forms.py under app. So we've imported a few things from Flask extension WTF, which is what the form. Import, yeah, my husband just laughed. Import forms. So we're going to make a form. From WT forms, import a text field and a Boolean field, which are the fields we're going to have. And from WT forms validators, import required, which we're not using quite yet, but we will. So we are creating a form, class, get lucky form. Now, if you've never used objects before in Python, a class is basically a blueprint for an object. They can get complicated, but here it's really simple. Basically, it's like this is the instructions on how to create a form. And form is a base class. Form has all this stuff with it, like all this crazy like code that goes with it. We're like, use that and add our extra stuff to it. And all that we're doing is saying we have a field called numbers. It is a text field. It is called numbers. These two things don't have to match, by the way. I make them match because I think that's just easier sometimes. So we went over the init file. We went over forms. Now let's look at views.py. It's a lot of work to get a form working, but it's worth it. Pull my head down again. Okay. So let's look. What have we added? Where is it? Nums. Ah, here it is. Approot, nums, methods, get and post. There are 3 methods you can use. Get and post. Get simply gets information. Posts gives information to a page. Get nums is our actual function name. The form is get lucky, which up here we imported from forms import get lucky. And then we're going to return render template. Here is our template, get lucky. And the form is equal to form, so it's expecting a form. Now let's look at the template. So we're extending base.html again. We've filled in the title, and here's our content. Form, action, no action. The method is post. The name of the form is get lucky. Form.hidden tag, that's just the CSRF that's part of that. We have a label. This is our label, lucky numbers. Form.numbers, it says go get that thing off of form. So here it says go get this. And we need a submit button. Yes, it's a lot of stuff that we had to put in to get forms working. But this is all just kind of setup crap. So once we've done all the setup, it's actually going to be much easier to move forward and have the form do something. So let's run run.py. And what is the path that we're looking for? Nums. Let's go to nums, /nums. Oh, thank goodness it's a form. And I'm just going to put like 562. It doesn't do anything at the moment. It is literally a form to nowhere. It doesn't do anything. But that's okay, because really what I wanted to do here was just make sure I had everything installed correctly, make sure that I had all the files where they needed to be, make sure I was importing all the things I needed. If this came up, then I was doing good. So let's start making our form do stuff. So go ahead and reset, check out master, check out B441299, and then clean. And let's look at what changed. So if we go to game.html, we've changed that a bit. We actually have your numbers now. So now instead of just saying like the winning numbers, we actually have a template variable called player nums. So we're going to get this from somewhere. Where are we going to get it? We are going to get it from views.py. Go all the way to the bottom. And as you can see, nums has grown a little bit. So we still have get and post as our methods. We still have our form. if the request.method, the request is basically the request to like that page. And there's all kinds of information about the request, like is it a get, is it a post, all kinds of stuff. If request.method is equal to post, we're going to do this stuff. If it's a get, then we're going to do this stuff. So if it's a get, we're just going to show them the form because all they did was they loaded the page. However, if it's a post, then what we're going to do is we're going to get the numbers from form.numbers.data, which we assume we have at this point, that we got this data, because that data should have been sent via the form. So if we look at, and I'll show you, here's the name of the form. Like it's actually going to post like that data. So we already know that that's the form, and it's going to have something called numbers, and numbers has data within it. So that's how you get the data out of every field. Like you look at the name of the field on on the actual like class, that .data is going to give you the data within that form field. So let's go back to the views. We're going to get those numbers, and all we're going to do is we're going to render the template game.html, game nums, or whatever game nums have been created, and the player nums equals numbers. So now let's run this. Oh, gotta run it first. Run, run. So we'll do 5, 6, 4, submit. Welcome to the game. The winning numbers are 74619 and your numbers are 564. So we got the values from the form and we sent them, here. So we can actually, get the winning numbers and show our numbers. Now you don't have to put these in the same thing. You don't have to put these in the same route. That's just something I chose to do at this point. So let's see. So at this point, the form does work. Now we can also make it a bit easier on the user to see if they actually won. So go ahead and get reset hard, get checkout master, get checkout B139205, and get clean FD. Now for this, if you try to hit reload, it'll actually reload the post. So you just want to hit enter. So 1, 2, 3, submit. And as you can see, we have the winning numbers 82657. My numbers were 1, 2, 3. I got 1 win. Let me show you what changed. In views.py, we only have to worry about this if we're posting. So we get the numbers, we get the game numbers, which, I forgot to show you that before. Get game nums is just another function that's up here. Get game nums. The reason I created another function was because I just wanted to simplify things a bit, and I had more than one view that used this kind of functionality. This is important to note that not everything in your views.py file has to be an actual view. You can just create functions. Some people put these into a different file. I don't mind them being in the same file unless everything is getting super crazy. So we get our game nums. Nums equals numbers.split. This takes a string, because remember, everything that's passed into Flask is assumed to be a string. They just turn it into a string. That's for safety reasons. Nums equals numbers.split. We're just going to split everything apart by the space. Going to set wins to 0. For every num in nums, if the integer value of that number is in game nums, we add 1 to wins. Then we return the game template with the game numbers, the player numbers, and the number of wins, which is how we get this. And yes, we updated the game template too, but we just added this right here. That was it. We're just expecting another value. So now we've made it a little bit easier to play the game. The last thing we are going to be doing with the game is we're actually going to have form validation. Because what happens, let's go to the page again. If we put an enter in 5, we get a value error. This is not something we would want the user to see, of course, but even if we, put in like a bad value, you wouldn't want something this nasty to show up. It's better just to put in some form validation of some kind. So reset, check out master, check out A8E41BA, and let's see what changed. I'm going to close a bunch of things. In this case, 2 things changed. Forms.py changed and views.py changed. So on our getLucky form, we actually have a new function. This is actually called a method when it's under a class, and it's within an object called validate. And it has to be called validate. It's expecting something called validate. By default, nothing is validated, but here we actually do want some validation. So we create a method called validate. We pass in self, that just means this thing I am, this form. Nums equals self.numbers.data.split. So we're going to split up all of our numbers. We're going to set valid to true. And we're actually just going to run some checks until it's false. So for num in nums, if not num is digit. So first we check to see if that number is a digit. We're not even converting it to an int. We're just checking to see if that string is a digit. And if it isn't, we set valid to false. If the length of the numbers does not equal 3, we want exactly 3 numbers, then we set valid to false. And we return valid. You want to return true or false. And in views, so if form.validate on submit, so somebody has submitted it and we want to validate it. We're going to request, if it's a post, numbers equals the form.numbers.data. We get the numbers, we get the game nums, we just do what we did before, but the difference is here we have validated the form first. So if this is false, we go down here. In this case, we just pop out the form again. We just don't do anything. So let's go and load the form. And I'm going to put in 5. It just doesn't do anything. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't do anything. So that's probably the second worst validation. The worst validation is just erroring and throwing up a huge error. The second to worst one is erroring and not telling anybody why. So let's add some validation errors. So reset if you've made any changes. Check out master. And check out this hash 020BF86 and then clean. Clean is less necessary now because I think all the folders pretty much stay as they are. So what has changed here? Now what we've done here is we've actually added a list called errors for num and nums. So if one of the numbers isn't a digit, we set valid to false, and we append to the list errors one of the items is not a number. Then we check for length. If the length of nums does not equal 3, valid is set to false. Errors.append, you may submit exactly 3 numbers. self.numbers.error equals a tuple called errors, which is just something that you can add to a form. The form is numbers, remember. It's called numbers. Actually, the field is called numbers. And you can actually add errors to a field, and that will show the errors right there, like with that field. That's nice. Tuple errors. And return valid, so true or false, which is what we want to return. We want to return true or false. Now we didn't actually change views. What we changed was get lucky. And here we've added a for loop, like we saw before. For field and form.errors, so they will actually have like all the errors. For error in form.errors of field. So that is just how Flask, or actually what the forms actually saves errors. So it saves the errors, it has an attribute called errors, and then it has, like, for each one of the fields, it has all the errors for that field. And we say error, and we print out the error. So let's see how this works. No, I don't want to submit. I want to enter. Okay, so first, I'm going to say 5. Submit. Error, one of the items is not a number. Error, you may submit exactly 3 numbers. So I only submitted one thing, and it was not even like a number. So if I say, okay, fine, 1, 2, 3, 4, because I'm not good at instructions, we submit it, you may submit exactly 3 numbers. And if I spell out 4, 5, 6, one of the items is not a number, blah, blah, blah. It says that 3 times. But you can change that. You don't have to have it say it 3 times, but that was my choice. And this time I just submit 1, 2, 3, because I finally understand the directions. And this time it works. It goes through, and I got 1 win. Next up, we're going to create a requirements.txt file. We're going to talk to Spotify, and we're going to go over some next steps that you can take with regards to learning more about Flask.